All right, let's just jump right in. For 6 straight years, an American citizen with zero training, no backup, and pretty much no way out was spying from inside the most isolated country on Earth. And this isn't a movie script. This is the absolutely unbelievable true story of the only Western spy to ever operate on the ground in North Korea.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth does something like this even happen? It sounds like a pitch for a Hollywood blockbuster, but it's the real-life story of a man named Kim Dong-chul. And his journey, well, it just defies all logic and really makes you question everything you think you know about the shadow war with North Korea.
And this, right here, this is what's so wild about the whole story. Look at the 2 columns. On one side, you've got the man, a pastor, a theologian, a guy who lived the American dream. And on the other side, the mission is just insane. Infiltrate a paranoid nuclear state, steal its darkest secrets, and, oh yeah, don't get executed. He was the one spy nobody would ever suspect, and that's exactly what made him the perfect weapon.
Okay, so to really get how incredible this was, you gotta understand the playing field. For decades, North Korea has been what's called a hard target. But really, it's an intelligence black hole for the West. I mean, sure, satellites can see missile silos from space, but they can't tell you what 2 generals are saying in a coffee shop in Pyongyang. The CIA couldn't get a single American inside. It wasn't just tough. It was the hardest of the hard targets. So you're probably thinking, what genius CIA plan finally cracked North Korea? Well, here's the thing. There wasn't one. They just got incredibly lucky. The perfect asset wasn't trained for years and sent in. He was already there, living a totally legitimate life, and get this, actually earning the trust of the North Korean government itself.
Yeah, Kim's backstory is not what you'd expect for a spy. He's a South Korean immigrant who comes to America, becomes a citizen, a pastor in Virginia, of all places. Then his missionary work takes him over to China, right on the border, and that's where this crazy opportunity pops up. His wife's family had connections, real high-level connections inside Pyongyang. So in 2004, North Korea didn't see him as a threat. They invited him in as an investor. He just walked right in through the front door.
And listen, he didn't just dip his toes in. The man went all in. He invested his entire life savings, we're talking over $2.5 million, to build a hotel there. For the North Korean regime, he was the perfect foreign investor. They even gave him awards. He became this trusted American businessman, living right there on their turf. The CIA's biggest prize, their white whale, had basically just beached itself right at their feet. So around 2009, you have these intelligence guys, South Korean and American, who finally make their move. But they didn't threaten him. They just made this quiet, really heavy appeal to his sense of duty. They basically said, look, you're a U.S. citizen. This is your country too. You're in a unique position to do something for it. They left the choice entirely up to him. And if he said no, that tiny window into that black hole, it might have slammed shut forever. He said yes. And just like that, without one word, yes, the pastor from Virginia was gone. In his place was Antenna, a spy operating completely and totally alone in a country full of watchers, a place where a single wrong move, even just one wrong word, meant you just disappear. So what about his spy training? Well, it wasn't some long course at Langley. We're talking about hurried briefings in random hotel rooms outside the country. The gear they gave him was basic, but finding it would be a death sentence. A camera hidden in a watch, a tiny earpiece, and they drilled one rule into him over and over. As soon as you use a gadget, you have to completely destroy it. And you know what? He was a natural. The results were incredible, right from the start. The very first bit of intel he smuggled out, his handlers just called it gold. He wasn't just a source, he started recruiting North Korean officials. And then, around 2011, he does something that sounds impossible. He gets his hands on a pure zinc ingot, a literal, physical piece of their nuclear program, and he carries it out of the country himself. A satellite just can't do that. Just take a second and let that number really sink in. 6 years. 2,190 days. Every single one of those mornings, he woke up knowing that could be the day he gets caught. To put that in perspective, he operated successfully, completely undetected for longer than the entire Korean War.
And this is where the story gets even crazier. He went from being a spy to running his own spies. He became a spy master. He figured out the one big weakness of the regime. After years of sanctions, everybody needed cash. So he started paying for information, shipping manifests, locations of troops, state secrets, building his own private intelligence network deep inside the belly of the beast. But here's the thing about spying, right?
Every win, every piece of intel you get is also another risk. Every person you talk to is a potential leak. You're leaving these tiny little breadcrumbs everywhere. And North Korea's counterintelligence service, they are notoriously paranoid and, well, very, very patient. They were watching. The clock was absolutely ticking.
This was it. The day his luck finally ran out. He'd just left a business meeting, was walking to his car. It was a totally normal day. The street was calm, the air was cool, everything was perfectly fine, right up until the moment it wasn't.
As he's walking, he sees one of his own guys, a North Korean man he paid for info, coming straight for him. In public, in broad daylight. It was a massive, catastrophic mistake. The man shoves a USB drive into his hand and just walks away. And you can just imagine that feeling in the pit of his stomach. His blood must have run cold. He knew, right then and there, it was a trap. He was already caught.
And the end came fast and with brutal efficiency. Kim gets into his car, and boom, the local counter-espionage chief slides right into the seat next to him. They drive to a hotel. Agents appear, they take the drive, and they pull a black blindfold over his eyes. After 2,190 days, the spy they called Antenna officially went dark.
And just like that, Kim Dong-chul was gone, wiped off the map. He just disappeared into the jaws of North Korea's secret police. For months, nobody in the outside world even knew if he was alive. His life as a spy was over, but his ordeal as a prisoner, that was just getting started.
What happened next is hard to talk about. The torture wasn't random. It was systematic, designed to just break him, to annihilate his identity. Beatings, sleep deprivation, starvation. They shattered the bones in his fingers by stomping on them with their boots. At his lowest point, he tried to end his own life, but they found him and revived him. And a guard actually sneered at him, "Number 429, you're destined to live a long life." That became his new name.
Look, everyone has a breaking point, and under that kind of pressure, he hit his. He was forced to read a confession on state TV, and he had to make a horrible, impossible choice. To protect his most important, high-level assets, he gave up the names of some of his lower-level contacts. His survival came at a terrible price, a price paid by others. The 6 North Koreans he named were executed. So he's sentenced to 10 years of hard labor, and you think, well, that's the end of the story. But then, politics. The gears of geopolitics started to turn in a weird way. The US and North Korea were suddenly talking about a summit, and Kim became a really valuable bargaining chip. So after 31 brutal months, he was just suddenly driven to an airfield and handed over to the Americans. So he's back home, in America. But the man who came back wasn't the same one who left. The physical and psychological toll was just immense. He was a broken man, haunted by what he'd done and what he'd been through. In his book, he calls himself a border rider, a man caught forever between these two enemy worlds, never really belonging to either one. And that's the one question that just hangs over everything, the one he's still trying to answer himself. Was it worth it? He lost his health, his entire fortune, years of his life. But he also says that what he went through gave him this profound appreciation for freedom, a feeling most of us will never know. He feels like he's living on borrowed time now, just trying to find a new purpose.
And maybe that's the real takeaway here. We always think success is the clean getaway, right? The hero riding off into the sunset, but his story didn't end that way. Still, his capture doesn't erase those 6 years of incredible success. He delivered intelligence no one else on the planet could get. In the impossible game of espionage, maybe success is just measured by how long you can make a miracle last.
So in the end, what's the final verdict on Kim Dong-chul? Well, there isn't one. It's not a simple story with a happy ending. His legacy is this messy, complicated thing. A story of incredible intelligence wins that have to be weighed against immense human sacrifice. It's a story of both triumph and tragedy, and it leaves you wondering about the true, unimaginable cost of finding out the secrets of the world's most secret nation.